Under the Florida sun, a charming man approached a young woman with a warm smile. He spoke of modeling opportunities, of professional photos that could change her life. But she had no idea that behind this enticing offer was a predator, a serial killer who would turn her dreams into a horrifying nightmare. As investigators followed his trail, they uncovered a truth more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. Welcome to Crime Investigation. If you're here, chances are you're just as fascinated by true crime as we are. We dive deep into the most chilling real-life cases, breaking down every disturbing detail that others shy away from. From shocking crime scenes to unbelievable twists, we'll take you through it all. Elizabeth Kenyon, a 23-year-old aspiring model, had big dreams. She was a finalist in a beauty pageant in Florida. Unfortunately, her promising journey was tragically cut short. On March 5, 1984, Elizabeth disappeared without a trace. Worried, her parents immediately contacted the Miami police to report her missing. As is often the case, the authorities downplayed their concerns, claiming there was no need to worry yet. They suggested that Elizabeth might be out celebrating her pageant success with friends or a boyfriend. The police advised the family to wait 24 hours before filing an official missing person report. But her parents knew this wasn't like Elizabeth. She wasn't the type to party and always made sure to inform others of her plans. A day passed, yet the police made no effort to solve her disappearance. Her mother had a strong feeling that something terrible had happened to her daughter. Ultimately, her parents decided to hire a private investigator. Alongside Elizabeth's parents, the detective visited the apartment Elizabeth had been renting, hoping to uncover any clues. After searching the apartment, they found two notable items: an address book and a photo album. The album contained several pictures of Elizabeth's friends, while a small note inside detailed her schedule for the day she went missing. The note mentioned a planned meeting with a photographer at a specific address. When the investigator followed up on this lead, the building concierge confirmed seeing Elizabeth on the day she disappeared. She had been accompanied by a man. The detective soon discovered that the man she was scheduled to meet was Christopher Wilder, a 38-year-old who had been in a relationship with Elizabeth. Christopher had even proposed to her, but Elizabeth declined, citing concerns about their age difference. On March 11th, just 6 days after Elizabeth went missing, the detective contacted Christopher to question him about her disappearance. Christopher claimed he had no idea where Elizabeth might be. The detective then arranged an in-person meeting with him. During their calm conversation, Christopher showed the detective some of his photography. Nothing incriminating or suspicious surfaced, except for one particular photo of Elizabeth. In the image, she appeared visibly frightened, which the seasoned detective found unusual. Christopher explained that they had only done a short photo session on the day in question, after which Elizabeth had supposedly left with an unidentified man. Still, the detective decided to investigate Christopher further. Christopher Wilder was born on March 13, 1945, in Sydney, New South Wales, to an Australian mother, June Wilder, and an American father, Coley Chapman Wilder, who was a naval officer. Christopher was the oldest of 4 sons. His life was challenging from the start. He was nearly stillborn and is believed to have almost drowned in a swimming pool at the age of 2. These incidents were only the beginning of his troubled life. On January 4, 1963, when Christopher was 17, he and 2 friends assaulted a 13-year-old girl at a quarry. While all 3 denied involvement, Christopher was sentenced to probation. He later claimed that he underwent electroshock therapy as part of a rehabilitation program. Some experts speculated that this treatment could have been a traumatic experience, potentially worsening his mental state and contributing to his later violent behavior. No concrete evidence of this therapy has ever been found. It's also possible that Christopher fabricated this story to justify his actions. A journalist even suggested that another claim, about nearly drowning in a swimming pool, was also false, as Christopher's parents never confirmed it. These accounts may have been Christopher's attempts to gain sympathy. In 1968, Christopher got married, but his wife left him after just 1 week. The separation occurred after Christopher was arrested on suspicion of multiple assault offenses at Manly Beach, Australia. Following their divorce, his ex-wife informed the authorities that she believed Christopher had attempted to seduce her mother and another relative shortly after their marriage. She also discovered photographs of women in lingerie in his work briefcase and car, suggesting an obsessive fixation on women. Additionally, she suspected that he had twice attempted to strangle her during intimate moments, possibly with the intent to kill her. In November of the same year, Christopher used sensitive photos to blackmail a nursing student in Australia into having an intimate relationship with him. Although the woman reported the incident to the police, the case was dropped because she refused to testify. Later, she revealed that her fear of retaliation from Christopher, whom she already perceived as unstable, had prevented her from coming forward. After emigrating to the United States, Christopher began a new chapter in his life, one that would eventually lead to his dark crimes. Resourceful and ambitious, he entered the real estate business and achieved notable success, amassing a substantial fortune. With his newfound wealth, he purchased a luxurious waterfront mansion in the prestigious Boynton Beach area, located 25 miles south of Palm Beach, along with a Porsche 911 and a boat. Christopher also developed a passion for car racing, participated in the Miami Grand Prix, and embraced an extravagant lifestyle. During this period, he frequently vacationed in Hawaii and the Bahamas. It was also during this time that he developed a strong interest in photography. He invested in high-end photography equipment to enhance the quality of his work, and even converted a room in his mansion into a dark room to fully immerse himself in the hobby. He was driven by other impulses, ones vastly different from artistic passion. Between 1971 and 1975, Christopher repeatedly became the focus of investigations related to abuse offenses. On one occasion, he lured a young woman into his pickup truck under the pretense of photographing her for a modeling agency. Of course, this was a lie, and the girl became a victim of brutal abuse. Despite numerous allegations from his victims, Christopher was never held accountable for his crimes. In 1977, a psychiatrist who evaluated him concluded that he was mentally ill. The psychiatrist considered him dangerous, recommending that he remain under constant medical supervision and participate in a specialized treatment program. According to the expert, Christopher harbored an obsessive desire to dominate women, degrade them to the level of slaves, and inflict pain and injury. The psychiatrist's conclusions did not result in any legal consequences, and Christopher was acquitted by the jury. On April 13, 1980, a 17-year-old girl named Carla Hendry from Beverly, Massachusetts, escaped from an attack and provided law enforcement with details about the perpetrator's vehicle. No action was taken. In 1982, while visiting his parents in Australia, Christopher was accused of an abuse offense involving two 15-year-old girls from Manly. He had lured them to a remote area and forced them to pose for inappropriate photos. Thankfully, the girls were not seriously harmed and were able to identify him, leading to his arrest. Christopher's parents posted bail for him, and he was even permitted to return to Florida while awaiting his legal proceedings, which were scheduled for April 1984. During the investigation into Elizabeth's case, authorities uncovered a connection to another disappearance. Just 7 days before Elizabeth vanished, a 20-year-old woman named Rosario Teresa Gonzalez went missing during the Miami Grand Prix. Christopher, a racing enthusiast, had attended the event. Rosario, a model working for a marketing company, had been handing out flyers and promotional items at the event. She vanished shortly after the race. It was later revealed that she had agreed to a photography session with Christopher, who had driven off in his Porsche. The circumstances strongly suggested that Christopher was involved in the disappearances of both women. On March 12, 1984, Elizabeth's parents sought help from an FBI special agent specializing in homicide investigations at the Miami office. Frustrated by law enforcement's lack of interest in the case, the family hired a private investigator and reached out to the Miami Herald to raise public awareness about Elizabeth's disappearance, hoping to provoke a response from the suspected abductor. On March 16, 1984, the newspaper published an article claiming significant progress in the investigation, though it did not mention Christopher by name. The article briefly described the suspect as an Australian, a race car driver, and an amateur photographer. The intention was to prompt a reaction from Christopher. Law enforcement finally began paying closer attention to these cases after they gained public attention. When agents reviewed the evidence, they quickly noticed a suspicious link between the two missing women, Elizabeth and Rosario, and their scheduled photography sessions with a man named Christopher. A background check revealed that Christopher had a long history of legal issues in Australia. At the time, he was on probation for an abuse charge and awaiting trial for another offense. This discovery gave the FBI sufficient grounds to open a full investigation on March 20th. Around the same time, they received a report from 19-year-old Linda Grover about an attempted kidnapping. Linda described being attacked by a man who had tried to abduct her, seemingly intending to hold her captive or abuse her as a slave. Thankfully, she managed to escape. Her description of the attacker matched Christopher exactly. An FBI agent immediately interviewed Linda. She explained that while she was working, a man approached her, complimented her appearance, and offered her a modeling opportunity. Claiming to be a fashion photographer, he invited her to his car to view his portfolio. Linda declined and walked away, but the man persisted. He followed her in his car, urging her to go to a park with him for a quick photo session, promising to pay her $25. Linda refused again and went into the store. When Linda stepped outside, the man approached her once more. Although he appeared friendly, she sensed something sinister about him that made her uncomfortable. She scanned the area for anyone who might help if needed, but the place was deserted. Christopher continued trying to convince her to join him for a photo shoot, even opening his car to show her fashion magazines. This all occurred in broad daylight in a public setting. Suddenly, Christopher struck Linda on the head, knocking her unconscious. When Linda woke up, she was immobilized in the back seat of a car. She began crying, which enraged Christopher. He stopped the car, taped her mouth shut with duct tape, and forced her into the trunk. He then drove to the Glen Oaks Motel. Once there, he stuffed her into a sack, restricting her movements entirely. Christopher glued her eyelids shut with superglue, tied her up, and subjected her to hours of torture, using a stun weapon to shock her whenever she resisted. His cruelty convinced Linda that she wouldn't survive. At one point, when Christopher became distracted, Linda managed to free herself and hide in the bathroom. She banged on the walls and screamed for help as loudly as she could. The noise scared Christopher, and he fled. Later, when an FBI agent showed Linda photographs of Christopher, she trembled and confidently identified him as her abductor. Linda eventually became a key witness in the case. The investigation progressed very slowly. Within a week, Linda had to leave the state out of fear for her safety. She was placed under FBI protection and relocated to a secure location. Law enforcement soon realized they were dealing with a violent and dangerous individual linked to multiple crimes. It took Linda more than 30 years to recover from the trauma she suffered. During that time, she earned a doctoral degree and frequently spoke to the media, sharing the story of her miraculous escape. At the time of her abduction, Linda didn't fully comprehend how fortunate she was to have survived. Despite her fear, she was determined to ensure the criminal was imprisoned for a long time. Meanwhile, authorities needed more evidence to charge Christopher with the abductions of Rosario and Elizabeth. Police secured a search warrant for Christopher's home and arrived with FBI agents. They broke down the door only to find the house empty. Christopher had fled days earlier. A massive manhunt was launched to locate him. Investigators thoroughly searched the house, but Christopher had meticulously cleaned it, leaving behind no fingerprints or evidence. Interviews with neighbors revealed that Christopher had disappeared immediately after the Glen Oaks motel incident, likely realizing that the police were closing in on him. On March 23rd, in Canaveral Groves, the body of 21-year-old Teresa Ann Ferguson was discovered. She had last been seen at a shopping mall with a man resembling Christopher. Investigators determined that Teresa had been beaten with a blunt object and then strangled to death. The method of the attack matched Christopher's profile, raising the victim count to 4. FBI agents concluded they were dealing with a serial killer and feared he could strike again at any moment. Immediate action was critical. That same day, alarming news arrived. The day before the raid on Christopher's home, he had been seen at a local bank withdrawing a large amount of cash. This was a serious setback because it meant he now had the resources to travel across the country, pay in cash, and avoid detection. With a 24-hour head start, he could already be anywhere. Previously, on March 21st, Christopher was seen in Texas, specifically in the parking lot of Lamar University in Beaumont. Witnesses reported that he was speaking with a young woman named Terry Diane Walden, a nursing student who was married and had 2 children. Christopher tried to lure her with an offer for a photo shoot, a tactic he often used, but Terry politely declined. Thankfully, he did not forcefully abduct her at that moment, sparing her life for the time being. Her safety was short-lived. Later, at a supermarket, Christopher, essentially lying in wait for Terry, approached her again. He repeated his photo shoot offer, this time in a more menacing tone. Terry refused once more, but Christopher was determined. He followed her through the store and into the parking lot, where he struck her on the head and abducted her. The FBI issued statements as they pursued this dangerous criminal, but he always seemed to stay about 2 days ahead of them, according to agents from the Miami office. A press release was issued describing Christopher's car, which he had used to kidnap Terry. Unfortunately, the car was a common model, and without a license plate number, the information was not very helpful. Terry's profile was distributed across the country, but the slower communication technology of the time delayed the spread of alerts. The FBI had no choice but to follow the grim trail of bodies Christopher left behind. On March 25th, at Penn Square Shopping Mall in Oklahoma City, he abducted 21-year-old Suzanne Wendy Logan. He then drove her to a motel in Newton, Kansas. The next morning, after breakfast, he took her to Milford Reservoir, where he stabbed her to death and left her body there. 2 days later, a fisherman discovered her remains. The investigation revealed she had been tortured, abused, and murdered in a particularly horrific manner. On March 28th, the FBI received a promising lead on Christopher when they discovered he had rented a motel room in Colorado using a stolen credit card. This allowed authorities to track his movements. Officers only learned about this payment the day after the room was booked. Acting quickly, all available police officers, along with FBI agents, rushed to the motel to apprehend Christopher, but he was already gone. Although their efforts narrowed the gap in their pursuit to about 1 day, it provided little reassurance, as Christopher's direction of travel remained unknown. Christopher's next sighting occurred at a shopping mall in Grand Junction, Colorado, where he was seen talking to an 18-year-old woman named Cheryl Lynn Bonaventura. Witnesses later observed the two together at a diner, where they mentioned plans to travel to Las Vegas. Around March 31st, Christopher attacked Cheryl near the Kanab River in Utah. Her body was discovered on May 3rd. This incident led law enforcement to identify malls as his preferred locations for targeting victims. Christopher portrayed himself as a polished and credible individual, dressing in elegant suits and grooming his mustache and beard meticulously. He carried business cards, wore a large diamond ring on the pinky of his left hand, a gold Rolex watch, and a Pentax camera slung over his shoulder, creating the image of a successful and respectable man. He used his charm and the pretense of being a professional photographer, searching for aspiring models to lure his victims, while also disarming the suspicions of security personnel and mall staff. Despite law enforcement distributing his photos and descriptions to shopping malls and supermarkets nationwide, Christopher continued moving across the country in search of new victims. On April 1st, Christopher Wilder's next victim was Michelle Lynn Korfman, a 17-year-old girl abducted at Meadows Shopping Mall in Las Vegas. Christopher had attended a photography event at the mall, where he approached Michelle and offered her an opportunity to become his first professional model. When the FBI learned about the incident and began investigating the mall, they collected photographs from event attendees, some of which showed Michelle with Christopher. Several images captured him selecting her as his target and following her. Michelle's body was discovered on May 11th. According to forensic analysis, her abductor had restrained and tortured her over an extended period. He sealed her mouth and eyes with superglue, abused her, and inflicted deep cuts while she was still alive. The wounds, approximately 3 centimeters deep, were not fatal but caused her immense pain. The hunt continued. On April 4th, 16-year-old Tina Marie Rizzico from California became Christopher's next victim. She had gone to a shopping mall in search of a summer job, hoping to save enough money to buy a new car to replace the old one her father had given her. At the mall, Christopher approached her, complimented her appearance, and offered her $100 in cash for a photo shoot. Hoping to earn some extra money, Tina agreed. They went to a nearby park, where she willingly posed, expecting to receive her payment. Christopher suddenly pulled out a weapon and forced her into his car. She had no choice but to comply. Christopher drove Tina to a motel in San Diego, where she was subjected to hours of brutal torture. He cut her with a knife, electrocuted her, beat her, and alternated these horrific acts with sexual assault. When Tina disappeared, the FBI issued a special bulletin and held a press conference. By this time, Christopher Wilder had become the most wanted fugitive in the United States. Tina was his 7th known victim, with at least 6 others already confirmed. Christopher's name and crimes were being discussed on television, in newspapers, and on the radio. The FBI hoped this extensive media coverage would lead to his capture. In the spring of 1984, the FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. Despite their efforts, Tina remained missing. Authorities hoped she might still be alive, but in reality, she was enduring unimaginable suffering. On the 6th day of captivity, Christopher told Tina he would set her free if she helped him lure in his next victim. Desperate to survive, Tina agreed. Christopher had already chosen his next target, Dawnette Sue Wilt, a young woman who worked part-time handing out flyers in supermarkets. He forced Tina to pretend she was looking for work in order to convince Dawnette to get into his car. The plan worked, and several witnesses reported seeing an unknown man leaving an Indiana shopping center with two women. The man's description matched Christopher, whose face was now widely recognized across the country. Despite promising Tina her freedom, Christopher refused to release her and forced her to watch as his victims endured horrifying torture. On April 12, 1984, Christopher, along with his hostages, saw a news report in which Tina's mother pleaded for her daughter's life. This triggered a panic attack in Christopher, something that had been happening more frequently. In a frantic state, he left the motel with his captives. Later, in a forest, Christopher attempted to kill Dawnette. After enduring days of torture, Dawnette was so desperate that she begged him to kill her. Christopher stabbed her twice with a knife. Due to severe blood loss and the sedatives he had been administering, Dawnette lost consciousness. Believing she was dead, Christopher abandoned her. Amazingly, Dawnette survived the nightmare. She regained consciousness, managed to reach the nearest road, and was found by a driver who helped her. Christopher returned to the spot where he had left Dawnette to confirm her death. But when he discovered she was no longer there, he panicked. Based on Dawnette's testimony, FBI agents determined that the suspect was heading toward the Canadian border. Investigators discovered he was driving a car stolen from Terry. The vehicle was soon found abandoned, but Christopher had once again managed to escape. He was next spotted at a shopping center in Victor, New York, where he targeted a 30-year-old woman named Beth Elaine Dodge to steal her Pontiac Firebird. Again, with Tina's assistance, Christopher took Beth to the woods and killed her. He did not abuse or torture Beth. He only wanted her car. After this cold-blooded murder, Christopher unexpectedly released Tina, even giving her money so she could return home. Tina became a crucial witness, providing detailed accounts of the horrors she endured during her captivity. FBI agents learned that Christopher had friends in Canada, whom he had visited periodically before his crime spree. Law enforcement was convinced he was heading to them. With his newly stolen car, Christopher had gained a significant lead over the agents. Authorities believed he was already en route to the border. In response, all available police forces were mobilized, and law enforcement agencies were alerted to the threat posed by Christopher. On April 13th, Christopher stopped at a service station in Colebrook, New Hampshire, near the Canadian border. Two state police officers at the scene recognized him as a dangerous criminal from distributed bulletins. As the officers carefully observed him, Christopher noticed their presence. He ran to his car and armed himself with a weapon. One of the officers attempted to tackle him from behind, leading to a struggle in which his weapon discharged twice. The first bullet hit Christopher, penetrating his back, while the second caused a fatal chest injury. The officer accidentally shot himself. Despite suffering serious injuries, the officer survived, underwent a long recovery, and later returned to duty as a celebrated hero who had stopped a killer capable of taking more lives. During a search of Christopher's car, police discovered a copy of the book The Collector by John Fowles. The novel tells the story of a man who kidnaps and imprisons a woman in a basement, eventually leading to her death. Authorities believe Christopher was inspired by this book and saw it as a model for his crimes. The serial killer was later cremated in Florida, leaving behind an estate valued at over $7 million. That same year, the court ordered taxes to be deducted from the estate, with the remaining funds distributed among the families of his victims. Several previous cases allegedly involving Christopher Wilder have also been mentioned. On May 29, 1982, near a property owned by Christopher, a bag containing the skeletal remains of 17-year-old Tina Marie Beebe was discovered. Tina's sister revealed that before her disappearance, Tina had planned to attend a photo shoot after being invited by a photographer. Similarly, 20-year-old aspiring model Sherry Lynn Ball disappeared on June 27, 1983, in Boca Raton, Florida, after leaving for a photo shoot. Her badly decomposed body was discovered 3 months later by a hunter in Shelby, New York. 18-year-old Tammy Lynn Leppert, an aspiring model, vanished in Florida following a heated argument with a man resembling Christopher Wilder. Tammy's mother, who had been actively supporting her modeling career, claimed that Christopher and Tammy had met during a film casting session. During this meeting, Christopher reportedly asked to photograph Tammy, but she refused. 15-year-old Colleen Emily Osborne went missing after leaving her home in Daytona Beach, Florida, on March 15, 1984. That day, she missed her school bus, skipped classes to go to the beach, and never returned home. On April 6, 1984, her partially buried body was found near a lake in Orange County, Florida. Investigators later uncovered that Christopher Wilder had stayed at a nearby motel on the same day as her disappearance. One of Colleen's classmates reported seeing a man resembling Christopher at their school, scouting for models. The man had offered $100 to a girl willing to pose for him, but Colleen declined. Christopher Wilder is remembered as one of the most notorious serial killers in the United States, infamously known by the nicknames the Beauty Queen Killer and the Snapshot Killer. The bodies of Rosario and Elizabeth were never recovered. It has been confirmed that he kidnapped 12 women and murdered 9 of them. Authorities also suspect his involvement in several other similar crimes in the United States and Australia during that period. Christopher Wilder is a chilling example of how cold-blooded killers can hide in plain sight, using charm and deception to lure their victims. While his reign of terror has ended, many questions remain unanswered, and some victims are still missing. What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Crime Investigation for more true crime stories.